Well, welcome to season 10 of the award-winning Retail Tea Break podcast. My name is Melissa Moore, the Retail Advisor. I'm a retail educator, trainer and retail conference MC. And each week as your host, I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers and brands to dispel the myths, share their knowledge and give you an insight into the retail industry. There's well over 100 episodes now for you to listen back to on your favourite podcast platform, or of course watch us over on YouTube. And while you're there, please hit that follow button so that you get to listen first every week. And if you've enjoyed an episode, don't forget to leave a comment or subscribe to the podcast to stay connected. And remember, sharing is caring in the retail industry. Share an episode across any platform with your network. And if you're on LinkedIn or Instagram, tag me, Melissa Moore, and the Retail Tea Break podcast. Oh, and a little secret we've been keeping. You can now find the Retail Tea Break podcast on Substack. You'll get to read my take on each episode, extra learnings, and lots more insight. So subscribe to the Retail Tea Break podcast on Substack today. In the meantime, then, grab a cup of tea, sit back, and enjoy season 10 of the glorious Retail Tea Break podcast. Today's guest specializes in the intersection of productivity and customer experience, helping retailers understand how colleague time is really being spent, where hidden inefficiencies are quietly impacting both profitability and, of course, the customer journey. With a retail career that started in Boots, spanning both stores and head office, today's guest worked across everything from beauty product development to operational productivity, giving her a deep understanding of the day-to-day pressures facing modern retail teams. Today, she leads on-site data capture, insight generation and workload modeling at ReThink Productivity, working with retailers to make smarter operational decisions and build more future-ready businesses. Sue Hedaux, co-founder and head of insights at ReThink Productivity, welcome to the Retail Tea Break podcast.
Thank you, Melissa. Great to be here.
I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. I get the impression, and I'm sure you'll tell me differently, that this is an area that retailers either hit or they don't, and they muddle on. So very excited to really kind of pull that apart with your knowledge and, of course, your expert knowledge. But on that, then, to kind of kick us off and set the scene, in the time that it takes to boil a kettle, which I am, of course, told is about 2 minutes, tell us a bit more about your background in the industry.
Well, I started when I was 15, actually working in a shop that my uncle had, as a Saturday assistant. And really, I've been in retail one way or another ever since, which is quite a few years now. So I trained as a pharmacist. And so that's how I ended up working at Boots. Worked at other places as well, but worked at Boots. And I was there a long time and did small stores through to the bigger stores, area and regional management. And then did various roles in head office, as you've talked about, but it was the head office roles that really got me into productivity from thinking about it from a corporate perspective. After Boots, I then worked in customer experience, largely working with retailers. So that was a really fascinating time as well. And then ReThink Productivity launched about 14 years ago now. So we work with lots of different retailers in the UK and globally. So as you said, trying to help them make better decisions about the productivity challenges that are facing them. And I think you said it's one of those things people get right or wrong, and you're right.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because it's different all the time. So just because you got it right 6 months ago doesn't mean you're getting it right now. It's one of those classic journey things, but actually productivity absolutely is a journey. It's not one and do it once and you're done. It's a keep going, keep going, keep going.
And you know what, you're right, actually, kind of phrasing it that way. We need to keep it front of mind, as you say. It's one of those things that has to be agile. And on that then, and I think what really drew me to you is you've recently released this ReThink Productivity Retail Report for 2026, Future Ready Retail, Smart Strategies for High Performance Operational Productivity. And again, I think that caught me because you've obviously worked in the industry an awful lot and across an awful lot of kind of different sectors almost within retail. So that operational piece, which me with my background on shop floor retail, is absolutely what caught me in. The headline stat though is absolutely mind-blowing. £6.25 billion in wasted labour. So what really struck me then was this idea that you talk about in the report of the productivity paradox. Stores that look efficient on paper, and I'm sure we've all worked for plenty of those, yet the customers are still queuing. And again, mindful of what you've talked about there, customer journey, customer experience. So what's going wrong, generally speaking, to make this happen?
We've had a number of years where there's been cost challenges within retail, where both on paper and in real life, the resourcing for stores has got tighter. So it's on paper, it's there, you can see it, so the stats look good, so they can look like they're being more productive and efficient. And in reality, it means there's fewer hours. And that tightening of resource, if I think back, going back to when I first started, people say, oh, there used to be more time to have a bit of a chat and have a laugh and, do stuff. And the reality is there was. And a lot of that flex time, if you like, has gone because, the realities of commercial life means it's had to be tightened. With that tightening, that flex didn't just give us the time for, a bit longer chat or whatever we were doing. It also meant that you could cope with the ups and downs. So, you'll know from your time, we used to say that, has a bus just arrived outside? Customers don't come in a steady flow. They just arrive with a massive bus load. If you've got a bit of capacity, then you can cope with that. If you haven't and it's all tight, you just end up with a queue and it's kind of, there's nowhere to go. You just have to hang on as a colleague until you've got through everybody. And it's the same for the customers. So it's that flexibility. And there's so many things, operation, that can kind of knock your operation. And as it's all got tighter, it's more difficult. So it can be things like, I say, that, a sudden peak of customers. It can be, even things like, a sudden rainstorm that sends everybody scurrying into your shop. Things like, your delivery was due at 9, you've got all your team in ready, didn't arrive till 11, and actually your team have now gone. So the people that are left are then having to do 2 lots of jobs. So it can be all sorts of things that really affects it. But it's just this tightness that then means it looks good on paper. But productivity is actually about what the output is for the input. So when you reach a point where it might be affecting your sales, you're not having that productivity benefit that you should be doing.
I think that's a really good point to make, and actually leads me on to this idea that higher efficiency, kind of getting it tighter and tighter and tighter again, because it looks good on paper, is the better way forward. But I suppose that's an enormous risk, and an efficiency risk, because as you say, you pull one tiny little cog out or you move something slightly, it impacts everything.
Yes, it does. And we say in our report that efficiency should free up capacity for better service, not squeeze it out.
Yeah.
And, that's the challenge, it's getting that right. And it isn't easy. If this stuff was easy, everybody would be getting it right all the time. But yeah, 100% of that, if everything's, running perfectly 100% of the time, yes, you can be super efficient. But kind of retail's about people, and it's unpredictable and things happen. So yeah, there's the risk, but I think the real challenge with it is that when you get this times when you aren't looking after your customers as well as you could be, you're causing a challenge to your brand, if you like. So you want your customers to see you at your best, and you want them to see you at your best at your busiest times, because that's when your most customers see you. So these things that can knock off your performance if you're not able to do your best and deliver your brand promise, that has a real impact for the brand and the customers and what they come to expect of you and why they come to you or not in the future.
That's a really interesting point, because I think an awful lot of people think productivity, efficiency, as you said, getting the stock out straight away or getting that queue down. But that's all very kind of here and now. It's very almost short-sighted. Whereas, as you said, you bring that brand, you bring that word brand in, and suddenly we're thinking long term, we're thinking lifetime value of a customer. We're thinking, yeah, we'll serve them today, but actually we want them to come back and enjoy the experience because we're actually quite calm. We're not running around like headless chickens.
Yes. And that efficiency and productivity drive that any retailer does has to be in service of their overall brand strategy. Now, you have to assume that strategy is right. And, each retailer has their own, purpose and what they're doing things. But your efficiency, any efficiency work you have to do has to be in service of that bigger brand and what that customer experience that you want to deliver is. It's no good being super efficient, but if that's not what your brand's about, customers are there for a big browse and a big chat, being super efficient just is a clash. So they've absolutely got to fit together. So you've got to be strategic as well as tactical. You've got to work at all these different levels.
There is a brilliant line in the report about retailers hitting the capacity ceiling. And I almost think it took me back to the days of scheduling and as you said, kind of busy weekends or the rain's pouring and everyone's flooded in. How can retailers spot when they've crossed it, but I suppose preempt it? So what are those early warning signs that we should be looking out for?
Yeah. For us, capacity ceiling is about making sure you deploy your capacity intelligently. So you've got capacity when you need it, and it's really about at your peak times. That's when it really matters. So if you're going to spot when you're heading into any challenges, the time to look at is your busiest times. And that, as we've just said, that's when you want your customers to see you at your best. That's when you should be delivering your absolute A game. So really keeping an eye on that busy time. And it depends what sort of business you've got, but you should be looking out for things. Have you got enough colleagues available to serve your customers? Have you got customers that are, if you've got customers walking out, and you do see that, then obviously that's a big red flag. So that's, a good warning sign to spot for. But have you really got the number of customers available at the right time? The other thing that's really important, obviously, if you're going to sell things, is to have your stock available on the shelf. So whether that's fashion, you need all your sizes, and kind of are you monitoring that, again, going into your peak times. But I say it's just having those products available. So it's easy to think about capacity as just having enough people available, but you've got to have been planning in advance so that you've got your stock available when your customers are there as well. The other thing I'd say to look out for is if you catch yourself making excuses regularly for why it's not quite perfect yet. Oh, well, we've had somebody off sick, or somebody was on holiday, or this happened. And if you kind of regularly making excuses about why you're not quite delivering what you want to, that's a good sign to say is something more systematic that I need to look at than just think it's just a series of things that have happened to me. So, yeah, because it's customers want that brand promise.
That's really interesting on the excuses thing. I feel like I've been transported back like 10, 20 years. But we do. I think we all know what good looks like. But to come back to one of your points there, and I'm sure you hear this a lot, we'd all love to have all the people that we need on the shop floor. It's either a matter of we think we can't afford it or we can't find them. And I suppose, are you hearing not excuses from retailers, but that's the lived reality for an awful lot of retailers out there right now. They actually don't have enough bodies to serve their customer.
Yeah, and it's a challenge because as we've had this tightening of resource, you need to start thinking more about kind of your full-time, part-time mix. And that's a really easy thing to say from an academic point of view.
Mm.
If the reality is you've got a well-established team that have worked with you for a long time and they've all got full-time contracts, you can't then say, actually, I need you to work just over lunch times, or, the world doesn't work like that. So it is a real challenge to both retain people that have got the skills and the experience to deliver what you want, and actually having that flexibility of resource. It's one of those balances that people are trying to navigate all the time, I think.
Does it become then almost like a chicken and an egg scenario? Because someone, and I've definitely heard it, even in the past week, people thinking that they can't afford to recruit, or do you know what? They actually can't find the bodies to bring in to train up to recruit. But yet, if they don't have them, they're not making that money. They're not fulfilling the need that the customer has. That money's not in the till. And then, of course, they can't pay for the staff. So it feels like a really strange scenario that some retailers almost find themselves in right now.
Yeah, you're right. And that's where we think that capacity piece is so important, because you've got to get it right when you're busiest, because that's when you have the biggest impact potential on your sales. So by getting that bit right, that's the bit that means you are getting your sales. Because otherwise you can circle down and down, if you cut and then you don't make your sales and then you cut again, it's a really difficult place to be. And it does happen to some, businesses on the high street, that we see it happening.
Yeah, and I like that idea that actually worst case scenario, look at the busy times, figure that out, and then almost build out around that to get this kind of solid look to what good looks like. Because again, I think a lot of us think of, as you said, what it looks like 10, 20 years ago. But actually right now our customers shop differently, their needs, they almost want to be more efficient. So it's
Yeah,
almost like moving those hours around, as you say, to what today looks like, what this year looks like.
absolutely.
Hidden drains. I found this kind of phrase fascinating. You highlight a lot of them in the reports. So things like tagging, click and collect, self-checkout interventions. If you were a retailer listening today, where should they first, I suppose, look to for quick wins that are actually freeing their people up? We've just talked about them not having enough, maybe people or hours, but how are we putting them in the right place? So therefore taking them away from those jobs that are actually maybe wasting their time. I hate to call it out like that.
Yeah, no, there's lots of them. So I think there's two bits I would say to this. Is one where businesses have invested in things to help them be more efficient. Really check how you're getting the most from that investment. And self-checkout tills is one of those that I regularly see as not being optimized. So it's a relatively big investment because you've got to buy the software, but usually there's some sort of refit involved to get your tills involved, get in the right place and that sort of thing. So in the report, we talk about the fact that we've even seen at times where 1 in 3 customer transactions requires an intervention. So is your
Ah.
software set up? Because you can imagine that's so annoying for customers as well as being such a drain on colleagues' times. And self-checkouts working well are brilliant at freeing people up, freeing up your colleagues, and actually giving customers the choice of some of them. I'm always quite happy to breeze through if I pick my stuff. It's like it works for everybody. But is it really working for you? So it's worth standing and watching what happens at those tills, because there can be so many things that mean slight tweaks that just mean you're not getting the benefit from the investment and you're not delivering the customer experience that you'd want to. And then the other thing I'd say is look at all your processes that you do. So, have a list of them. Things like, are you doing lots of stock counts? Why are you doing them? What happens if you stop doing them? What can you stop? What can you automate? What can you just do differently? We've seen things when we've been out and about studying it in stores, things like supervisors signing and checking refund receipts. Well, it's all on the journal roll. If the till balances, why do all those things? There can be all sorts of admin that people have got into. And it might have been because there was a risk in the past and something's gone wrong. So they put this big process round to stop it ever happening again. But you reach a point where those processes just are too much for what the risk is.
I think that's really good advice. It really is. There are definitely moments we're wasting, and I think this is probably the issue, is none of us feel like we're wasting hours or days, but it must be all those minutes. And as you say, you see this a lot being on the floor with the retailers. It's all those moments that each person is wasting that actually by the time you finish their working week are then adding up into the hours.
Yes. The other one that we see a lot is I call it taking stock for a walk. So yeah, we have a real tendency in retail to think we have to be busy all the time. So if I've got 2 minutes, or I can just fit that one hairspray, I think I might have one of those in the back. I'll go and have a look, bring it out. Oh no, it doesn't fit. I'll take it back again. And actually, you want to get to a stage where you want to touch your stock as few times as possible. But it's that, we see people bringing things out just to see if it fits. And it's like, is there a better use of that time? Sometimes just waiting to be available for a customer and delivering them the best experience is a much better use of time than bringing stuff in and out that doesn't work. Because from a customer perspective, if there's a gap you want to do something about it. But actually, if there's 5 on the shelf, but you might have 1 in the bag, 5 on the shelf is plenty. It's like, so don't do that. Look after your customers instead.
Oh my goodness, I want to scream this louder. I think we've all gone through a phase, and I'm sure you were the same, that you had to look busy. Now,
Yeah,
looking busy and being busy or foolishly busy are two completely different things. And as you said, nowadays, are we not better off serving the customer in the best possible way, as opposed to kind of having our heads down? And I love that kind of scenario that you've just talked about of the amount of retail colleagues I have seen do this, or part kind of packing, as you said, bringing half a carton out or half a box out, when actually, do you know what, as you said, if they just waited, you could fill the whole shelf.
yeah,
You touch it once, you touch the box once, touch the product once. It's way more efficient for everyone. But yeah, we've got into this weird mindset that we have to be faffing with things to make
yeah,
ourselves feel like we're getting paid to do a job.
yes, yeah. Yeah, we can often see when we're doing studies, we call them time filling tasks. So it's like, yes, your team are busy, actually how much is time filling tasks. And it's things like tidying shelves, pulling forward, going and fetching stock just in case, all those sorts of things.
So just in case has to go. I think that's a really big message. You've
Yeah.
got 6 golden rules in the report that are super practical. I loved reading these. But if you had to pick just one lever that would make the biggest difference this year, where do we start? Anyone listening right now, where should they start?
I think for me, it would be that capacity. So it's the number one really is the capacity lever, which is that back to looking at busy times, you know, and there can be practical things you can do to free up your team at practical times. And that standing back and looking and seeing what's happened. So you can't always magic up more people. Can you have different work patterns? Even things like are breaks taken at the right time. The number of times we'll be studying, you see everybody's off for break between 1 till 2, and actually the customer peaks 1 till 2. Well, you can do innovative patterns. You can give people a break. You can even say, well, actually, have a shorter break and then go home earlier because actually we're quieter then. There's things that you can do with breaks. And then, making sure the number of times we see stock tasks being done while it's still at peak times, it's creating those windows of this is pure customer time and being realistic about it and making sure you've got the right people available. So for me, it's if you're going to look at that one lever, it's how do you make capacity when your customers really want it? Because that's when they're going to buy more, and that's going to hopefully fuel growth, which means you can take more people on, and everything works better when you're growing.
It really does. And actually, you remind me there, I worked for an amazing retailer who banned senior management from having lunch between 1 and 2 for that very reason. And they
Yeah,
were very transparent about the fact that hour is paying your wages. So
yeah.
again, you get used to it. You plan your day around that. And actually on top of that, then it's a really interesting idea that, do you know what? It's so much easier and quicker to pack out stock when it's quiet. Like again, surely this is a no-brainer that we shouldn't be touching our stock when we're full of customers, actually, and it's so much quicker and handier for the colleague to be packing it out. The beginning of the day, the end of the day, people aren't in their way. Like, let's call a spade here. It's much more efficient for everyone and easier too.
And it's so frustrating for the colleague
Yeah.
to know you're not doing either thing well. So if you're constantly trying to keep an eye on the till, you're not being as efficient with the stock. And actually, if you wait until a customer gets to the till and then you're not looking after the customer as well either. It puts colleagues in quite a difficult position to be expecting them to do both things and knowing they're not doing either to the best of their ability, really. So
Yeah, it's
it's not good one.
frustrating for sure. Well, look,
Yeah.
one question I'm asking every guest on the podcast this season, what are you most excited or most curious about when it comes to the future of retail?
I'm really curious about how AI is going to impact retail. And not just because I'm a retailer, background and think about productivity. Actually, I love shopping too. So what difference is it going to make? And how's it going to inform what's the people impact? Because to me, a lot of retail is still about people. So, I can really get that AI will help with forecasting and making stock theirs. Actually, what difference will it make to those conversations that we have? Will it get used in a way that really helps people? There's a lot of shopping journeys where customers are looking for advice and help. How's AI going to be used in that? That's not a clunky way. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it really impacts that human side of it. Because I'm sure it will do something. What that's going to be, I'm really interested to see.
That's a really good one as well, isn't it? It's supporting everyone. Have you seen anything, Sue, at all that you think might, or even parts of either the shopper journey there or even the colleague journey where they're starting to plug in AI that you think eventually will work really well for them?
There's a few retailers that use sort of information with when they're talking to customers. So for example, Holland and Barrett have a tablet that they can make sure they're giving all the best information to when they're having those conversations with those customers. And there's other retailers. So some of the telecoms retailers, again, they've got such a wide range of products and narrowing them down. So they've got various tools that help them. So those sorts of things have been around for a while. I'm kind of wondering, well, what's the next step? And I remember years ago there were things like wine selector things in the supermarkets, which, they're not there anymore. There was screens and things. So it's like we've tried with things. How you do it in a way that doesn't really interrupt that human connection that's happening, I think is going to be one of the really interesting bits.
Oh, it's exciting. And also, then I'm still mindful of what you said almost at the beginning, that let's not put these things in for the sake of it. Is it adding an extra step either to the shopper journey or to the colleagues? Because that in itself, and I'm very mindful that AI is being utilized in some retailers, unfortunately, for the sake of AI's sake, because they're very excited for the new shiny thing. But yeah, really grounded in what you've said, that actually it should be saving time. It should be making everyone more efficient, that we're not double jobbing or adding a layer in to everyone's day.
And it's back to that brand piece. So it actually has to be in service of delivering your brand promise. Because actually, if it's like you say, AI for the sake of it, or it just makes it clunky, or it's takes it to a whole different feel of the whole interaction, then that's not in service of your brand. It's kind of the smart retailers will be really good at weaving that in so it becomes the right way. And I think there's another challenge thinking about AI coming in terms of if you're giving people another system or another platform to have to use. We've seen businesses where you have colleagues that jump between 3 or 4 different systems. Now, the customer won't necessarily see, they're busy tapping away, and actually get very good at chatting while they're doing what they need to do. But actually, if they didn't have to do that jumping between systems, they wouldn't have to have the filler chat. They're very good at it, but maybe, the transaction could be over a bit quicker, or it could be doing it more focusing on the customer rather than half an eye while they're also, the customer spending a lot of time looking at the top of their head while they're typing away.
That's
So
a
I
really
think
good point. A really, really good point. And actually, now that you say it, I'm very much more aware of this happening too. Yeah, it's frustrating for everyone, actually. It's not a great
yeah.
way to be. So that's a really good insight there as well. And I'm sure in time, as we're building and rebuilding tech stacks for AI, that some of these things hopefully will be reduced. But look, last question then. Obviously, the report, Rethink Productivity Retail Report 2026, is out, and it is a fantastic read. But upon that, then, what's coming up next for you and the team this year?
Well, we're out and about as always in lots of different retailers, different clients. So helping them make those better decisions about productivity. And that's, we've got a team across the globe. I think we're in 4 continents at the minute. So we're definitely out and about. We've got another thing happening this year is we've launched our productivity, some new courses about productivity. So we're conscious that there's things that we've learned on the way and top tips that we can share with people. So we've launched a course that's an introduction to productivity. So it's really aimed at people that are perhaps moving into productivity departments in head office or process improvement or whatever it's called. They're starting there. It's kind of to give them some frameworks to use when they're getting used to working in those new environments. And also a sister one to that, which is for people that are working in workload planning teams. So the people that do the budgeting, that work out that store needs X amount of hours and cost each week. So there's a one that's about planning as well. So they're happening. And then the other thing we're really excited about is every year for the past 10 years, we run a productivity forum. So this September, on September the 10th, it's going to be our 11th. And we get together a load of retailers, hospitality, lots of different clients, and we share best practice. We talk about all things productivity. And it's really good because when you work in productivity, you tend to be in kind of a bit of a corner of the operation. So you work with lots of other people, but when you've got your productivity head on, you're a part of a smaller group usually. It's really great to go and spend time with other people that are doing that same job but in lots of other organisations. So I say it's lots of chance to chat, share ideas, network, build links, share about common problems and that sort of thing. So that's a free event for retailers. If people want to go to it, they can sign up on our website. There's a link there. So that's at the ReThink Productivity website. So we're looking forward to that.
That sounds fantastic because, as you say, sometimes you kind of either need to hear or be safe in the knowledge that it's not just you. There are other retailers going through the same thing. But I love that idea of sharing best practice, sharing problems. It's a really safe space for people to come together and say, look, these are the issues we're having this year, but also learn from retailers who might be a couple of steps ahead. So it's such a great idea to have that.
When I worked at Boots, we were working on something where we were introduced to another retailer that had gone through the same process beforehand. And actually it saved us I'd probably say it saved us about a year of experimentation, because they said,
Wow.
we thought we were going to do this, this, and this. It's like, yes, that's what we think. They said, yeah, we tried that and this is what we found. So actually we're doing this now. It's like, great, we'll just do this then. So, it's those sorts of conversations, they just add so much value.
Oh, fantastic. And as you said, that networking piece, meeting together with people, like-minded people with those same issues is absolutely brilliant. So really excited for that coming up in September. And look, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please do share it from any of the podcast platforms with your network. And if you're on social media, tag me, Melissa Moore, and the Retail Tea Break podcast. You can, of course, listen back to previous seasons. I think we're up to over 120 episodes now. So catch them on any of your favorite podcast platforms. And of course, while you're there, hit that follow button so that you get to listen first every week. Sue, I'll obviously share the website details in the show notes. Where can people find you as well?
On LinkedIn, you'll find me at Sue Hedaux, and also through the website, you can contact us there too.
Well, fantastic, Sue. It's been an absolute pleasure. And as I keep saying, this report, I think, spoke to me so well as someone that's been a store manager and someone that's worked my way up throughout retail, because it pulls on so many different avenues there. It isn't just productivity for the sake of kind of HR or people. There's so much in it. Thank you for sharing the report, and delighted to have you on today. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Melissa.